Xpress Nation, we are back with week 3. Week 1, week 2 has been dynamite to say the least. Currently, with my game predictions, I'm sitting at 8-7. I'm just over 500, a lot better than last year. Last week I went 2-3 with SMU dropping in double overtime, Missouri beating Kansas by multiple touchdowns, and then Iowa not getting the job done, losing by 3 to Iowa State. It was a close call. In at least 2 of the 3 games that I lost, both losing by 3 points. But I came around with the UNLV and Oklahoma dub. The week before, I went 6-4. So an 8-7 season to start the first 2 weeks. At least I'm over 500. I'm hoping I can clean a straight 4-0 slate this week, but we'll see. We'll see what I'm looking like. But with some football, there's a lot of takeaways. There's a lot of stuff to cover between AP poll. I have a wild take to discuss with y'all. And like always, we got my game day picks we got to talk about. So let's go ahead and get into it. And starting off with the AP poll. And something I've noticed over the last 2 or 3 weeks is that they have a certain criteria on ranking these teams. And I honestly kind of like it because they're knocking teams for losing certain games. Like all your teams that have lost to unranked, that have basically got kicked out of the top 25. And then they're knocking top 10 teams for struggling against group of 5 or unranked teams where they shouldn't be favorably and they should actually beat them handily. And I like that. I like that they're actually putting down an actual criteria on how they rank these teams. But it's so inconsistent because they're holding on to that name value. And I'm gonna use the biggest example on the AP top 25 with Alabama, Florida, SMU, and Arizona State, right? Florida should have not dropped out of the top 25 with their loss to South Florida because USF beat a top 25 team the week prior, turn around and beat a top 14 team in Florida. Then they get bumped out of the top 25, where Alabama, who loses to an unranked FSU team, stays within the top 20, top 25. How does that make sense? I don't know. And everyone's going to say, well, it's name value. Well, why use name value? Everyone knew, or everyone assumed, I wouldn't say knew because FSU is proved to be a top 10, top 15 team, that FSU was a terrible team. They were 2-10 the year before. They should have walked in and won by 2 scores over Alabama. But they did. They beat them 31-17. But Alabama doesn't drop. They stayed within the top 25. Okay, Arizona State loses by 4 to Mississippi State. They drop completely out. Okay, if you're going to hinder one team, you got to hinder them all. I don't care about name value. If you lose to an unranked, the way Alabama lost to an unranked, you need to be penalized for such. In which Arizona State losing to 4 points to an unranked needs to be penalized for such, right? So if you're going to keep Alabama in for losing 2 scores to an unranked team, and you drop them down 13 slots, do the same thing for Arizona State. Okay, you drop them down, they probably would have landed about 24-25 from last week's ranking. SMU, I can understand kicking them out to losing to Baylor in double overtime. I can understand that. But Florida and Arizona State still deserving to be slotted in the top 25, even if it's 20 through 25, because of what you did with Bama. I mean, it's that consistency value that they're lacking. And then when you look at the upper half of the top 25, Oregon jumps Miami for whatever reason. They've played nobody. They have done literally nothing on their schedule to showcase that they are a top 4 team, besides beating teams that are cupcakes and squashing a Oklahoma State team that has been struggling. But you jump a Miami team who's beaten a top 10 team already this season. So what has Oregon done that is better than Miami's schedule when Miami's beating a top 10 team? Okay, question mark. And then you drop Georgia, who struggled against Austin Peay, but keep LSU at 3. And I'm not hating on LSU. And by no means, I don't want it to sound like I'm hating on LSU or I'm hating on Oregon. I mean, all those teams are probably still top 6 teams. But when you hit one team and say, okay, I'm going to drop you in ranking because of your struggle, and you don't drop another team for a same performance against a smaller tier school, then there's inconsistency across the board. And it makes absolute, like, you even knock South Carolina for struggling. You knock Clemson for struggling. And LSU beat Clemson. So the same team you're criticizing and you're knocking down in rankings for struggling against smaller opponents like Troy, Austin Peay. You're keeping LSU in this same ranking. When you have all these other teams dropping, like South Carolina, struggling against South Carolina State, you knock everybody down a peg, but you still keep one up there. For whatever reason, name value, the name value of the players on the team, that they have a Heisman candidate, it's probably a reason why they keep it in there. And we've already seen videos coming out of one of the AP voters. I don't even know her name because I didn't even waste time listening to her full thing when she said there's really no, I'm not really going to give out my rhyme and reason or my logic behind it, because there is none. When you have a Florida team in over a South Florida team that they lost to the week prior, her entire top 25 was just, and it shows like there's a lot of folks in there that don't watch the sport, that don't pay attention whatsoever, and they just look at name value. I mean, that's very prevalent because Alabama stayed, everyone else dropped out. LSU stayed in the top 3 when Georgia dropped as number 6. I mean, they're only looking at, okay, who's the Heisman contenders, who has the biggest name value. And that's how they're ranking these teams for most of them. For a lot of them, and you see it, South Carolina, Clemson getting knocked, Georgia getting knocked, Arizona State getting dropped out, Florida getting dropped out, that they are hitting teams with a high level of expectation and has a strict criteria out this year. But it's just so inconsistent. I like how they're judging these teams. I really do. Like, Georgia should have dropped for struggling against Austin Peay, but LSU should have dropped also. So I like the way they're ranking the teams. I just wish it was a little bit more consistent. Now, with all that out the way, when I look at the landscape going into week 3, there's a lot of teams that honestly I didn't have a lot of expectations on, and then there's some teams where they've kind of performed on how I've expected them to play. One, Miami has exceeded my expectations. I will go ahead and admit, last week I even said the week before, even coming into the season, I've had a lot of doubts with Miami. They've proven me wrong in a lot of the cases. When they play South Florida this week, or today, really, this should be really a testament on if they can stay consistent. Because, South Florida is going to be a scrappy team. UNLV played UCLA last night. They're a team that I had kind of high expectations on. They didn't play UCLA last night. They played UCLA last week. New Mexico played them last night. I'm so sorry. UCLA is so dumpster fire right now. It is crazy. But back to UNLV. See, for them, I thought their biggest struggle was they just couldn't get over Boise State last year. And a lot of teams couldn't get over Boise State last year. And I thought, with a new head coach, they were literally just a couple plays away the year before, that they should compete fairly well in most of their games. But defensively, they are abysmal. They average 100+ yards and penalties a game. Makes sense when you look at who their coaches are. But UNLV is someone that I've completely almost missed out on, because South Florida, I think, is the team that is favored to come out of the group of 5 regardless of what happens in the Miami game. South Florida can lose by 14, they can win by 3, they can lose by 10. It doesn't matter if they win or lose this game. If Miami shows a level of consistency throughout the season, we've seen it so far with Clemson. They're struggling. They can't get any offensive momentum going whatsoever for whatever reason. They don't have a running back. They don't have healthy receivers. Their play caller's not making the right plays. Whatever it is, Clemson is just struggling offensively. And then that kind of leaves the door open for Miami. SMU's already shown a level of inconsistencies with how the DBs are playing. That's going to hurt them. South Florida has a true opportunity to really run their own destiny this season as a one-loss team. And I say they're probably one of the only one-loss teams across college football that's going to be able to control their destiny the way they're going to be able to control it, right? Because even, like, if Penn State or Ohio State's a one-loss team, right, going into their conference championship game, they're going to have to win that game in order to get a proper seeding. South Florida, as a one-loss team, and they go through and they win their conference championship game, they're in the playoffs and they're seeded regardless. Like, they got 12 locked. Now, is it going to be a high seed? Probably not. If they beat Miami, more than likely, would they get a higher seed? Yes. But they know where they're going to place. They will more than likely know what to expect. They're coming in at 12. They're going to have to play all the way in, while everyone else is going to have to figure out, okay, where am I seating? Where am I playing? So South Florida will have their work cut out and just knows, okay, we're 12. We're going to have to play our way up. That's going to have to be the mentality going forward. And if you can get a team to kind of buy into that, we're going to have to earn our way through the playoffs, because a lot of these teams are going to be expecting to get a seeding spot where they can 1 through 4. Some of these teams are going to be buying in to try to not rank where they have to play. Like, for instance, like, comes down to Georgia, LSU, or let's go back to the Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State. Each one of those teams are going to be fighting for a top 4 seed. If not, 2 out of the 3 will make a top 4 seed with the way the ACC is playing, unless Miami has anything to say about it. That's what I'm saying. Miami has to be consistent. South Florida knows they're going to be a 12 seed. Their head coach and their coaching staff can use that as fuel to generate a type of momentum going into the playoffs. A lot better than any of the coaches that are fighting in for a 1 through 4 spot. It's just a different ability. Like, it's just a different way for the coaches to just take that and use it as momentum, because you know where you're going. Like, everyone in the country knows where you're going. So I say South Florida, and I'm not going to say make this take as like South Florida winning the Natty, but South Florida for sure has the best shot at making the playoffs right now, only just because they're going to finish as a 12 seed regardless of this win or loss, and they can use this as great fuel to motivate the team come playoff season to get a win over one of the top tier teams that they will face in the first round. Now, for whatever reason, if they fumble and drop the bag in the regular season, this take makes no sense, can be thrown in the trash, and we can move on from it. Something else that I've kind of noticed so far, besides who's guaranteed in the playoffs and who's not, is I think college football, the tides are turning in football, and the reason why I say that is I think the playing field is leveling out. I believe in the next 2, maybe 3 years, name value will be completely tarnished for most of your Power 4 teams, and it's going to be just college football at the FBS level. Because we've seen a lot of Group of 5, we've seen a lot of FCS level schools compete with your Power 4, and I honestly think we've had more unranked wins in the first 2 weeks of college football than we've had in the last 2 or 3, 4 years. And I was told, a lot of that's probably having to do with, these teams with the transfer portal having to gel a little bit more. But that's the thing. If your team is taking a while to gel because of transfer portals, then you lose in the early first 3-4 weeks of the season. That's going to hurt you for the rest of the year. I mean, those early losses are going to hinder you going forward in the season. So, North Dakota, it's Kansas State. They've struggled all year long. They're 1-3 right now, losing to Arizona last night. But North Dakota playing close to Kansas State. Austin Peay, Louisiana Tech, running it close with Georgia and LSU for the majority of the first half of the game. Troy doing what they did against Clemson in the first half of the game. Now, obviously, there's still levels to it. That's why the higher tier teams won. But those universities that are smaller that go into those games, the head coaches, I'm telling you, do not go into those games expecting to win. Okay? Gambling State wasn't going in that game going, we're going to beat Ohio State. No, they just didn't want to get BTA'd. Same thing, like Austin Peay probably went into that game, we might have a shot. That's just the coach telling the players, giving them motivation, because you can't just tell them, you're going to lose downright. So, those smaller schools getting those halftime, like forcing the team into halftime with a close game or a lead over a top 4, top 10 team, a national rank in the top 25, whatever they are. And regardless of the result at the end of the game, they force a Power 4 team that is ranked in the top 25 to go to their limit. And I think that's a very big win for the university itself, because that's going to increase its value. That's going to increase its odds of getting better recruits, especially if they can carry that momentum into their regular season play against their conference and win games. Like if Austin Peay can take that momentum of like you hung in with Georgia, go into their conference play, and win out and win conference, well, that's going to increase their odds on getting better recruits. Louisiana Tech doing the same thing. So these close wins or close losses to these Power 4 schools that are top tier in the country are going to do tremendous work for the smaller tier group of 5s and FCS level schools, especially the ones that are trying to jump into the FBS. So I think times are changing. I think, like I said, 2 or 3 years, we're going to see a new landscape of college football. And conference realignment, a huge conference realignment, is coming for college football. All right, so we're back. I know I rambled on with a bunch of different random shit. Like I said, that was all hot take. That was all just off the top of my dome stuff that I just thought of over the last couple nights. It can make sense. It won't make sense. You can agree with it. You don't have to agree with it. It's just something that I've seen, with the first couple weeks of football, something that I've noticed circling around in the conversation wheel. So you can take it how you want to. Call me crazy. I'm completely fine with it. Let's go ahead and move on to our game day picks. Let's see, for this week, this was a little harder of a week for me to choose my game day picks, but the games that I settled down on, kicking us off, Georgia versus Tennessee. I was really deciding not to really go with this game, being a Georgia fan, because sometimes when I decide to ride with Georgia, they don't play well. Tennessee, I'll never root for Tennessee. I don't hate Tennessee, being a Georgia fan, which is crazy, but I'm not going to root for them either. But then I heard a lot of smack that Tennessee has the opportunity to beat us because of their offense, and when I hear smack talk, I got to go ahead and back up my team. So with Georgia, I know a lot of folks are probably circling around, they have one of the best defenses in years. I don't see it. I mean, yes, they got a good defense, which is going to very well handle Tennessee offensively. And Tennessee's hurt. I mean, Tennessee's losing both their starting corners to injury. So offensively, Colby Young was that guy last year before the stuff happened with Young. Now he's back. Zachariah Branch is basically what Ladd McConkey was. We have our tight end group, which why we haven't utilized our tight ends up until this point, it just baffles me. The thing that hurts me with Georgia is the fact that their offensive play calling is so terrible that's a lot of the reason why we're so tight in games. And that's a lot of the reason why we struggled last year. And I'll say that's a lot. Play calling this year as a whole, for whatever reason, all these offenses are just across the entire landscape of football, not just Georgia, are trying to play this big ball, money ball, strike it big type of offense. Be methodical. Grind out the yardage. Spread the defense out. Utilize your playmakers. Quit trying to go for the Hail Mary ball every single play. It racks my nerves watching a team that has the tools and the players to spread a defense out. You see the weakness watching the game, and they just decide to call the same play over and over and over, and they don't even use their star players. Like, that's something I missed out on, like Notre Dame not utilizing Love. Like, why are you not utilizing your MVP? But we'll discuss that later. Back to Georgia versus Tennessee. Georgia play calling offensively is abysmal, but Tennessee is hurt defensively. I'm going to ride with Georgia pushing it out. I'm not going to say Georgia's winning by 2 scores, but Georgia will get the win over Tennessee in Knoxville. For my sleeper pick of the week, I know a lot of people were hating on me for this take earlier in the offseason, but I'm riding with them. I've rode with them all last year, even going into the Georgia game, which hurt a lot, being that this is our rival school. Georgia Tech versus Clemson. I've been high on Haynes King all last year. I was high on him coming into this year. I think with the way Clemson is spiraling out of control, this is Clemson's opportunity to kind of rein in on that and take control of their season. But at the same time, I can't bet against Haynes King. I just like the way he balls out. And, you know, Georgia Tech's biggest fault is they're inconsistent on defense, and their entire offense is Haynes King. I feel like at times defensively, once the game really starts coming in late, that defense hones in. But like I said, play calling. They're running that offense through Haynes King. There's no separation in play calling. And I know they have the receivers to choose different plays, but they're just deciding not to for whatever reason. Like, Eric Rivers was a phenomenal receiver at FIU. Right? There's no way that this man got over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns doing tunnel screens all season long. Okay, he was running route. Malik Rutherford most definitely can go out there and run routes. Now, yes, they can block. Jamal Haynes is one of the best receiving backs, pass and running, actual running back in the ACC. They got this man blocking and barely carrying the rock. I mean, he busted one down in the Colorado game on an outside run, but the play calling is questionable. But I just love Georgia Tech. I'm a big Haynes King fan, so I'm going to ride with Haynes King over Clemson. And for my final game of the week, it would be Texas A&M versus Notre Dame. To me, A&M has been completely washed on defense, allowing 20-plus points to Utah State. UTSA, allow UTSA to play them extremely close. Reed is a very athletic quarterback. I think they have a great running back setup, but they just haven't utilized their running backs right. I mean, neither running back has really popped off. And a lot of people were talking about how Moss was going to be a star-studded SEC running back, but he really hasn't done much. And it all circles back to the play calling. Marcel Reed, I think he has the tools. He's still young. He's still making those young decisions. Defensively, I don't trust it at all, especially what Notre Dame brings in offensively. They're going to test that offense. The only thing I say that A&M really has the leg up is if they can get that offensive line to push the Irish's front seven, because we've seen in the Miami game, it did struggle a lot. I mean, that is probably the weak point for the Irish. So if they can really get that offensive line moving, then yeah, for sure, A&M will have a shot. But I haven't seen enough consistency. Yes, they can score points, but I'm going to ride with the Irish's defense. I think C.J. Carr, even being a redshirt freshman, was making very smart decisions against a top 10 team. So I don't think he's going to go into the Notre Dame or into the A&M game. Even being it's a home game, that's even less likely for him to go in and make rookie mistakes. Not saying it's out of the question, but C.J. Carr has shown to be a poised leader. I think if they just utilize their MVP running back, I can't emphasize that enough. Use your MVP running back. Just use the guy that's in the Heisman conversation that was supposed to be the best running back coming into college football. Just use them. Then I think they should be fine. So I'm going to go with Notre Dame over A&M.